Sure, Michigan gets all the hype for its lake living, the city of Detroit making a comeback, and its endless outdoor activities. But have you ever wondered, what is the flip side? Moving to Michigan might sound great, but imagine the shock when you're living here only to discover a side of Michigan that turns out to be your worst nightmare. Before you pack your bags, let me tell you about the things that most people in my profession won't tell you at all. And hey, if we're meeting here for the first time, my name is Eric Meldrum. I'm a realtor with True Living Group, and in today's video, we're covering the top 10 reasons why people regret moving to Michigan. So if you do like this video, make sure you subscribe, tap that little bell so you're the first to learn about all things living in Michigan. So the first reason people regret moving to Michigan is the harsh and brutal winters. Now, I've grown up here my whole entire life, and I'll be honest with you, this comes up a lot in conversation, and I get it. Like, winters are harsh, shoveling snow, de-icing your windshield, like all that stuff is no fun. But there's also a flip side to it. But I want to stick with why so many people are not ready for it is they're just not prepared. They're not prepared for their winters here in Michigan. They're not prepared from a clothing perspective. They're not prepared from a car perspective. If you're living in a Sunbelt state or maybe out west where you don't get a lot of snow, you don't know what type of vehicle to drive. And if you're driving a sedan or something with front wheel drive, those aren't the best. Now, they're better than rear wheel drive. So if you got a Corvette or a Ferrari or something like that, you definitely don't want to be driving those in the winter. I mean, you're going to ruin that thing for sure. And that's the one thing I do see is like people just aren't prepared for it. They're not prepared for the road conditions. They're not prepared for, everyday life, like winterizing their home, making sure all those things are taken care of. So when it comes to that, like I totally get it. But if you can truly embrace the winter here in Michigan and you love being outside, you love being in the snow, you love snowboarding, skiing, snowmobiling, ice fishing, ice skating, playing hockey on ponds, growing up, that was one of our favorite things to do. But like I said, if you're not prepared for the winter, it can be harsh. And that's the reason why so many people regret it is because they're just not prepared for it. And next up is the unpredictable weather. Now, this kind of dovetails really well with the winter months, waking up and not knowing if it's going to be 30 degrees or 60 degrees. Like that's a pretty big swing. I will say, having lived in Michigan my whole entire life, with the exception of 1 year we lived in California, I would much rather take the weather here in Michigan over hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, earthquakes. Those things are just like a hard no for me. We get tornadoes once in a great while. I remember growing up, like we always had like tornado warnings, but nothing ever touched down. We never really had any imminent threat of a tornado. Now, as of recently, living in like Livingston County and near Washtenaw, they've had touchdowns in Genesee County, which is just north of us, but it really happens in the farmland. But the unpredictable weather can be pretty intense. Do I wear a sweater outside? These are first world problems. Trust me. I know the silliness of this, but for somebody who wants the sunshine and rainbows all day long, Michigan is probably not the place for you. Just last night, for example, we had a massive thunderstorm come through. It was enough for me to say, we're going to head into the basement. We stayed down there for about a half hour, just kind of bunkered in place and let the storm pass just to make sure no branches or trees, because our house is surrounded with trees, didn't come down. But yep, that's unpredictable weather. It just happens from time to time, but it's very rare, in occurrence. So next up are the seasonal allergies that we have here in Michigan. So if you are somebody who does have allergies or just sensitive to like pollen, ragweed, cottonwoods, those type of things that make your eyes itch or you get the sniffles, Michigan is one of those states that does have quite a bit of that. So I don't know where it falls, basically on the spectrum of is it the worst state? Is it the best state? I would imagine it's probably somewhere in the middle. I didn't actually look up if it's that bad, but I think a lot of states have that. Even down in Florida, when the red tide comes in, that can really cause respiratory issues and cause people to have sensitivities just like allergies. But if you are somebody that has allergies, they do exist here in Michigan. Just be aware of that. And next up, Michigan has a ton of water. So with a lot of water comes a lot of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes and bugs are in full effect here in Michigan. I grew up in St. Clair Shores and we would always get fish flies. Some people might know them as mayflies, but fish flies would cover the entire storefront. Along Lake St. Clair, there was a 7-Eleven on Jefferson and we would ride our bikes up there and literally as we're riding into the parking lot, it's just crunch, 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 crunch. I can't even make the sound because I just remember it's implanted in my head. All these fish flies are just popping. But that's only near certain areas in Michigan. I know we don't get them out in like Washtenaw or Livingston County as bad as you would in like Macomb or Wayne County near Detroit. But mosquitoes, they're all over the place. Like my girls, we can be outside starting at like 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I know immediately, like I don't get bit as bad. It's something about my daughters and my wife's blood or their skin. Like mosquitoes absolutely love them. So I'll always let them know, like, hey, time to put bug spray on, or let's just go inside. So mosquitoes can get, pretty bad, so if you are near lakes or ponds, like that's where they're going to live, rivers, streams, like that's where they're breeding. They can even do in still water, right? So if you just have like a flower pot outside that it's an old one or something that water collects in, trust me, mosquitoes will find that and then they're just going to be around. I've found that the best way to get rid of them is those citronella candles. So keeping those around plus bug spray usually can get rid of them and, eliminate 90% of the bites. And another reason why people regret moving to Michigan is for the high car insurance. Now, I lived in 2 different states. I've lived in Michigan pretty much my whole entire life and California for a year. And I didn't really notice a difference. In California, for an auto policy, that's going to run you right around $25.73 per year. Okay. And then Michigan will run you right around $28.87 per year. And the main reason why our car insurance in Michigan is so high is because we're a no-fault state. It really doesn't matter who caused the accident. You're going to take a claim out with your insurance company and they're going to cover your personal injury. They're going to cover your personal damage for that. So that's one of the reasons why the premiums can be a little bit higher than most states. It's because of the auto insurance policies and how they view who's at fault and who's not. The other thing that we do have is also a unlimited personal injury policy. So pretty much every financial institution, if you're buying a car and financing it, is going to require you to have that minimum coverage, and those premiums and coverage that you need to have are much higher than different states. Okay, so you're already paying a little bit more. We're starting the bar a little bit higher than most states here in Michigan for auto insurance. So the coverage is a little bit more broad, is a little bit higher in terms of the policy. And that's the reason why you see car insurance here in Michigan cost so much more than some other states. Another regret people have that they don't know about before moving here to Michigan are the poor road conditions. That doesn't even come across anybody's mind when making that move. It is going to take a beating on your suspension, on your car. You're going to go through tires quicker. You're just going to go through a lot of wear and tear on the car. So your cost of your ownership of your vehicle, that goes up. Not to mention, it's just not enjoyable. Like that's the running joke, here in Michigan is like, watch out for potholes. Okay, when you're in construction zones and coming out of the winter months, you'll see orange cones out, not because there's construction, but like there's a pothole. People are trying to warn you, hey, there's a huge, massive, gaping pothole here that will flatten your tire. So are the roads bad in every city? No. Most of the bad roads are going to be kind of like the Metro Detroit area. The closer to Detroit you get, the worse the roads are. The highways, are pretty bad. So you got 75, the Lodge, you got 96, 696. All of those roads that are very highly traveled, those are the ones that get beat up the most. And we don't have tolls here in Michigan. Like if you're driving through Ohio to get to Michigan, you'll be smooth sailing, like, how are these roads so good? And then as soon as you get to Michigan, you're like, bum, 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 bum. It's a noticeable difference. Like if anybody's made the drive and they know what I'm talking about, put that in the comments below. Let other people know I'm telling the truth. But again, that's not all roads for every city. Ann Arbor's pretty good. Northville's good. Where they have higher taxes, like for example, Birmingham, Ann Arbor, Northville, Plymouth, those roads are pretty good. Right, because that city wants to take care of their infrastructure and they're making an investment in it. All right, so this next one is something that people really don't know about if they're coming from a larger city like New York or Chicago, where transportation is basically readily available. You got trains, you got taxis, you got pretty much bus system that can take you anywhere. Well, here in Michigan, that's not the case. Certain cities do have more reliable transportation. Like if we're comparing Ann Arbor to Detroit, for example, both of them have a mass transit system. They have a bus system. But if you look at the reviews and what people say about the transit system in Detroit, very unreliable. Okay, most people just don't want to ride it. They're going to be 30 minutes late for work, or they're standing at the bus stop, in the blazing sun or the freezing cold. And it's like, why am I doing this? Why can the bus not get here on time? But Ann Arbor, on the other hand, that thing runs like clockwork. I've never heard anybody talk negative negatively about it. So if you're comparing those two cities, Ann Arbor's totally doable. Like you could live in Ann Arbor and get away with not having a vehicle, but public transportation is not readily available in every major city, here in Michigan. Like Brighton, for example, basically non-existent. There's a system or a bus system that you can call for medical visits and different things if you do need transportation, but you got to seek it out and schedule it. It's not running on a regular schedule. And next up, this one's kind of a double-edged sword, and it's really the economic strain that we have here in Michigan. Seeing that Michigan, a lot of the population live in Southeast Michigan and lower part of Michigan. We have a large landmass where, there's not a lot of opportunities, right? So if you're somebody that's moving to Michigan looking for affordable living, which the average cost of a home in Michigan is right around $280,000, you can find those homes. They might be in areas that just don't have a lot of job opportunities. You can come here and find an amazing opportunity at any of the hospital systems, any of the universities, any of the technology companies that we have, any of the automotive companies that are here, whether it's a supplier or an OEM, but that's not everywhere in Michigan. Right, so if you're going to be living somewhere around the middle of the state, it's really not a ton going on. Right, you're going to be limited to the local businesses that are there, or there may be some remote manufacturing companies, but to attract the talent, you got to have a good quality of life, and it's more of a small town feel. And so if that's what you're going for and you want to live a little bit slower paced life, those do exist. But for the high paying jobs, you're going to find a majority of those in the Southeast Michigan, Metro Detroit area, which the cost of living is going to be roughly $400,000. It kind of is on par with the national average. Cost of living in Birmingham is right around $800,000 for a house. Grosse Pointe, somewhere around $600,000. Northville is going to be north of $550,000, and then Ann Arbor is $525,000. So I just want you to know, coming to Michigan doesn't mean you're going to find a $280,000 house in every area that you'd want to live. So one of the other things people just aren't prepared for is the traffic here in Michigan. Now, if you are coming from like New York, Chicago, or California, or Atlanta for that matter, where traffic is horrendous, you might be like, I got this. Just be aware there is traffic, and it all stems from the major roads that we have here that are just so terrible. Having construction all the time, you just have to account for that. So pull out your Waze app, pull out your Google Maps, pull out your Apple Map, turn on the traffic setting because it will show you where all the red is. And people swear by Waze. Like, I'm just not a Waze user. I used it once, and I think this is why I just don't like it, is because it took me the most ass backwards way to get somewhere where I know the traffic wasn't even that bad. It was trying to avoid lights. So maybe they've gotten better. I don't know. Drop in the comments below. Let me know if I should give Waze another try or if I should just be done with it forever. Now, last up on our list, and another reason why people regret moving to Michigan after they've lived here for some time, and it's usually after a full year or after tax season, because Michigan does have a state income tax. Okay, 4.25% of your income is going to go to the state. So for a lot of people, they look at that and they're like, well, that sucks because I'm paying self-employment tax, I'm paying, all these different taxes, and then on top of that, I got sales tax. I'll probably just go somewhere else. So you see a lot of Michiganders, in their retirement years, start going to Florida, and that seems to be a better state for people with no state income tax. So they move their primary residence to Florida. That's where they have it, so they can claim all their taxes in Florida. Don't take that advice from me. Check with your CPA, but I know that's why a lot of people do it. So in addition to the state income tax, we do have a little bit higher property taxes. Property taxes are going to be roughly 1.63% of your home value. In some different cities like Detroit, you can see property taxes get over 2% of your value. Now, not all properties in Detroit are worth that much, so you might have a $150,000 to $200,000 home compared to a $400,000 home somewhere else that the property taxes are the same. Cool thing about Detroit is if you're buying in one of the NEZ areas, there's tax abatements, and those are transferable from owner to owner, which they're just trying to bring more people downtown living there and making it more affordable for them to do so, for people rehabbing or building new construction in those areas. All right, so there you have it. All things to consider when making that move here to Michigan, and hopefully you see why some people regret moving. Maybe some of these things resonated with you. Like I said, I grew up here in Michigan my whole entire life. I don't know any better, so take it with a grain of salt. Maybe there's a utopia out there. I can have the weather in Michigan and I can have all of the things, right? I've always said, if I can move my whole entire family to California, we'd probably live in California. right? Minus all the politics and all the BS that goes on out there. Same with Florida. You know, absolutely beautiful. But I will say I'm not thrilled about the earthquakes. I'm not thrilled about the hurricanes. Like, don't want any part of that. So I'm going to keep my butt here in Michigan, and we'll probably have a second home in Florida, which is our other market that we serve. So if you are moving to Florida, check out our other channel, Living in Tampa, Florida. And my partner Juan and I, we make these videos to help people just like you make better decisions when moving here to Michigan or Florida. And until next time, check out these other videos that we got on the channel to learn about living here in Michigan. And if you are making that move here in 1 month or 1 year from now, don't hesitate to get a hold of us. All my contact information is down below. And don't forget to subscribe, tap that little bell so you're the first to learn about all things living in Michigan. Until next time, catch you on the next one.